Hi, and welcome to The Good Leader, where we explore the aspects of good leadership and take the journey to becoming a good and effective leader. I am Dr. Julie Donnelly, executive nurse, thought leader, and leadership coach. Leadership is my passion, and I am on a mission to help you become the best leader that you can be so you feel good about your leadership skills, you feel confident, and enjoy leading. Today's topic is what can we learn from bad leaders? I have many stories of poor leadership. In fact, it is exactly these experiences that led me to study leadership in order to learn good leadership practices. If we are to learn to lead well, then studying bad leadership is helpful so that we gain knowledge about what good leadership should be like. We cannot know the good without the bad. During my first job in healthcare, while I was attending nursing school, I was working at a psychiatric institution as a psychiatric technician, and I was on an adolescent unit. It was January of 1994, and January, new semester was starting. I needed to discuss my schedule for the upcoming semester with my manager. I was working full time during those years and going to school as many hours as I needed to get the work done. So I went to my boss's office and wanted to catch her before she left. So I asked her if I could just have a few minutes of her time at some point during the week, not right then. And she suddenly started screaming at me at the top of her lungs. She then flung herself out of the office and just left. Um, I was very young. I was young in my career. Can you imagine for a moment how that made me feel? It was very strange behavior, and I was completely taken off guard. This was my first introduction to bad leadership. And luckily for me, and unbeknownst to me or to her at this time, there was a witness to the events that transpired. So it was not just her word against mine. There was someone in an office right outside the hallway where I was standing. And they felt so compelled to report the incident to leadership, which was very helpful for me. So in this instance, the problem was managed, and I'm very grateful to the gentleman for doing that. But as we know, it does not always work out so well. And often we have to, tolerate this behavior repeatedly. Um, so even though it worked out well, it did not change how disrespectful that encounter was and how that encounter impacted me. Think about the times that you've experienced bad leadership. What was it that the leader did that made it a bad experience for you? Were they, for example, poor at managing their emotions, such as the example I gave? Perhaps they yelled or berate people. Um, we often hear of people raising their voices at others in meetings, in public, in hallways, or even in offices. One of my executive clients recently discussed her boss's poor behavior during Zoom sessions and how different people would be on the hot seat depending on what was on the agenda for the day. No one, no one goes to work wanting to feel, disrespected like that. No one wants to live in fear at the workplace. Emotional reactivity demonstrates a lack of awareness of themselves and the impact that that behavior has on other people. Self management and self awareness are critical emotional intelligence skills that every leader must demonstrate. Were the bad behaviors of leaders in your experience ineffective communicators? There are many instances of poor communication in the workplace, and this is one of the largest areas that we'll be discussing through our time together in these videos. There's so many examples, but just a couple. Perhaps A poor leader will not disseminate information to keep people informed. Perhaps they don't give clear instructions, yet they hold you accountable for meeting those untold expectations. A bad leader may simply not know how to communicate well, and yet communication is a critical element of a good leader. Some leaders are sort of absent and barely communicate, they're not there. Others tell you only bits and pieces of information. One of my bosses liked to obtain information from his direct reports, so he would gather the information and then share only portions of data. He wanted to be the know it all, and so you had to go to him for any information, and he left us all in the dark. This didn't lend itself to a very team oriented, right? It didn't help promote teamwork. It led to fear and actually the hoarding of information. No one trusted one another. He made us all feel like information was a commodity and that you were very, very lucky if you had any at all. Any that wasn't yours, any information that didn't pertain to your area or department. Another problem with bad leaders is when they do not address issues as they occur. This is another really big issue. You may hear about a problem regarding something you did at an annual performance review. It could have happened 8 months ago and you had no clue. You're thinking that you did a great job because no one's ever said anything to you, and yet here you are, sort of on the hot seat. And, or worse, you may not hear anything until you're called in for discipline and you have no idea that something that you've done has been problematic in the workplace. The problem also could be with another employee, and people may have complained over and over again, or the work is not getting done, and yet the manager is unwilling to address the problem. Silence gives the behavior permission. And so if the boss does not address it, then the behavior will continue, and therefore morale suffers. And the individual doesn't really realize that their behavior is bad, so they just keep doing it. How about a boss who plays favorites? This may show up as not being fair in their treatment of people, or even a vagrant demonstration of liking and accepting some people, but then treating others poorly or just ignoring them. Another previous boss I had back in 1996 had literally forgotten people's names. So she was touring me when I started, and everybody reported up to her. She was the leader of the department. And she would point at people and go, yeah, that person over there with the blonde hair, and this one over here with the ponytail, and this guy over here in the white shirt. I mean, it was very disconcerting to me. And yet, other times, a couple people would be in her office for long stretches of time, and they seemingly could do no wrong, even though some of their behaviors were problematic. The rest of us, of course, were doing the work. This company wound up closing, and I often wonder how her behavior and the poor leadership may have contributed to the demise of this company. There's no way of knowing, of course, but does this sound familiar to you? So many people I've spoken with share similar stories of favoritism. How does it feel to be part of this type of work environment? Even if you're one of the accepted ones, it can't feel good to know that other people are being treated or devalued, while others, the few, are lifted up and on a pedestal. Another thing that bad bosses do is either not delegate or delegate, but then watch over and micromanage every little thing you do. It's a very controlling behavior. It can seem that the boss doesn't trust their people if they keep work to themselves that other people could clearly do. And if they are watching over you for every little thing, did they really delegate? How does that make you feel? Does it build trust? Do you feel as though this person believes in you or no? And another thing is just the lack of praise. So when we only hear what we're doing wrong in the workplace, um, this can lead to you to doubt yourself. If all you ever hear is what you're doing wrong, or that you're not doing this, or that you're, um, it can lead you to doubt yourself and to develop a negative self view. So, poor emotional management, bad communication skills, not dealing with problems, favoritism, not delegating, or micromanaging when they do delegate, a lack of praise. These are just a few of the ways that bad leadership shows up. What other things can you think of? You've probably experienced other ways that bad leadership shows up in the workplace. Um, you know, what does all this mean? A bad leader may not really know how to lead. They may not know how their behavior impacts others. It certainly doesn't excuse them from leading and from leading well. It's their obligation to learn. Um, Unfortunately, however, the bad leader creates an environment where people do not feel safe. They don't feel safe to speak up. They don't feel safe to be themselves. They don't feel safe to stand out in any way. This type of environment builds a lack of employee engagement. In fact, people feel disengaged because they shrink or they hide rather than do anything that could bring them attention to them. A bad leader like this may favor the bottom line and getting things done rather than their people. And what that means is that they don't take time to care about, appreciate, or value the human beings that they have working for them, or they may not know how to show it. The bad leader also becomes very self focused, or they could be very self focused. They could be. They may be politically motivated, meaning they're more focused on looking good to the others that they look up to, typically the higher ups, so that they can make a good impression, get that raise, and they may not care about anybody else. Or they may be insecure, lacking confidence. They may feel like an imposter in their role. They may also feel threatened by others who show promise. So if you're smart and you have potential, they may not want to see you succeed for fear of what that means to them. How's that, right? A bad leader breeds mistrust. People may live in fear on the job or of how they'll be treated. They do not feel valued or appreciated. And over time, this can hurt and damage us. Bad leaders can make our lives very unhappy and stressful. And as one of the top reasons that people leave their job is bad management or bad leadership. They don't feel valued. And turnover is very expensive for organizations. People want to be treated fairly, trusted, respected, and they want opportunities for growth. They want autonomy. They want to be creative and they want to feel like they can just be themselves at the workplace, their professional self in the workplace. And maybe even have fun working together and performing the work. As I said before, if we are to lead well, then studying bad leadership is helpful so that we can gain knowledge about what good leadership should be like. We cannot know the good without the bad. So, here are some things for you to consider as you go through your week. Consider some of the worst leaders you have ever experienced. What did they do? Take some time to write down all the things that poor leaders have done that you've seen and that you've seen and that you've heard about perhaps from other people. Think of everything that you can think of, put down. And then write down how it felt to be in that kind of environment. How did that make you feel? Really take some time with this exercise. It's important that you evaluate the bad in order to get to the good. So that's your first step. Your second step for this exercise is to flip each of these items on your list around to its positive experience. So, what would a good leader do instead of what you experienced in that particular situation? This, this is the gold. This is what we're looking to become. Okay, so we're looking for the good. We're going to mine the bad to look for the good. Okay, and one more thing for you to consider that this week, and that is to review your list of qualities for the good leader and circle the things that you do well. Congratulate yourself. That's wonderful. Underline those things that you would like to revisit and improve upon. Celebrate the things that you do well. And this way, you have an accomplishments list, and then you also have a leadership development list that you can work on to improve your leadership skills. I highly recommend that you keep a journal and reflect upon your leadership journey. Let me know how you're doing. This work that we covered today can be quite eye-opening. Reach out to me if I can assist you in any way. You can visit me online at drjuliadonnelly.com. I am Dr. Julie Donnelly. Thanks for joining me. Please place your comments or questions below, and I will address your leadership questions in a future video. Be sure to subscribe to the channel. I'll see you next time. Make it a great week.